Hello, lovely humans. Today, for happy hour, we are being joined by the lovely, lovely Banana Warrior, who we're going to be talking about inclusion and having hard conversations, and she's actually right upstairs right now. But, so we can be on here together, we're separated. There are so many mosquitoes out here. We're currently in Koh Samui on a girls trip, which is really, really nice.
Good morning!
Where are you? In the bathroom?
No, I'm in my room. I've figured out a really nice little spot.
Oh, it's a good
Imagine if I was in the bathroom sitting on the toilet doing a live.
Just like,
No.
I'm so excited. So,
Yeah, me
Julie's
too.
together in Koh Samui, but she's upstairs.
How funny is that, guys? So funny. We could have done this sitting next to each other, couldn't we? But it's more fun like this.
It's more fun. So
It's more fun.
It has the vibes.
Woo-hoo! Babe, can I just say I'm so honoured to be on this podcast. I've been waiting for you to ask me since the beginning. And I'm like, when is it coming? And here we are. When's she going to do it?
I'm so excited, because you and I, we have really good conversations. I mean, in general, but really on this topic.
Absolutely.
We're going to be covering today is about inclusion and having hard conversations, and not just with, let's fix this before it falls over, with what's currently going on, but how to lean into it without causing an argument, without offensive, without feeling like it's attacking or hurting someone's feelings, like using your voice in a way that can be constructive to dive a little bit deeper and provoke thoughts within other people.
Absolutely. That's the whole point. Yeah.
So a little quick introduction is for those that are just tuning in. My name is Laura Martin. I am an binge drinking, binge eating artist that turned CEO of a now thriving company that helps those suffering from anxiety and depression to heal using food. Not too long ago, I remember just feeling totally trapped by everything that was happening in mind, body, spirit, and not knowing even the vocabulary or the way to communicate what was going on in my body. So I used food and all this other stuff to escape. Fast forward to after many failed attempts, lessons learned, all the face plants that you could imagine, I now have a life that makes me feel so supercharged and alive. And that's from communicating and meeting people like you and meeting people around the world that have sparked these conversations that I can now have because of the communication and finding those words. And so that's exactly what I want to bring to happy hour is pragmatic solutions for people getting happy. You can go to Dr. Google, and now there's in a day and age where there is so much information that we're paralyzed and we don't know what's right. All this kind of that's a real person doing real things.
Absolutely.
And forward. And so that's why I'm really excited to have you on here, is just you're someone that demonstrates a life well lived, right? And and it's the highs and the lows, and it's just you can see yourself in the way that you live your life, and it's very much inspiring and stuff like that. So for anyone that is tuning in right now, if you are someone that has tried it all and you don't know where else to turn, welcome. This is a spot for you. And new to the whole game of I want to live better, I want to think better, I want to do better, something like that, but you don't really know the first step, welcome. It's a whole spectrum. And so today, what we're going to be diving into with the lovely Julia from the Banana Warrior, who is the creator and founder of this delicious banana bread and vegan treats as well. But she does just creating these foods. She educates you on source products, what's good for your body, what's good for your soul, what's good for this. She's the most mindful human, really.
Oh, so lovely.
A beautiful body positive advocate, and there's so much more to you than the
babe.
that I was just, and she's just an amazing friend and just all this kind of stuff. So it's really
my goodness.
But yeah, you can
babe.
introduce yourself for the people.
Well, I mean, that was probably the best introduction I've ever had in my life. So I don't know what else there is to say about that. But yeah, I am the founder and creator of the Banana Warrior, which is exactly as Laura said, a plant-based health food brand here in Bangkok. And we specialize mainly in vegan desserts. So yeah, you can check us out. I'll tell you all of the details at the end. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this chat, because this is the kind of chat that I have not been having so regularly on Instagram, but been having really regularly with, you know, people like you, my friends, and outside of Instagram. So I'm so excited to be talking about it today.
Yeah, me too. And it's like, and I mean, we can just dive in. It's one of the conversations that I, for one, and I've said this to you, it's like a spiritual awakening that like I didn't even know. Now looking back on it, it was my blind spot, because I grew up in a way not seeing color, and not in the way that everyone else is using that phrase right now. Like, I don't see,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
didn't. There were 3 Black kids in my school, and they weren't. It just was. I grew up in like the outside suburbs of Chicago, which now I'm learning is because of this whole like wave that all the white people moved out of the suburb, like to the suburbs to get away. Like, I didn't know any of this stuff growing up, and I wasn't aware of my privilege of all of this stuff. I knew I was privileged because of the family I grew up in, like relatively wealthy, all that kind of stuff, but I didn't realize because of my skin, because of all these different things. And so I don't know how to have the conversation. And even when we were trying to decide what to speak on today, I was like, well, I don't want it to overtake everything, but like at the same time, it needs to overtake everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
So I don't.
I know it's a difficult one to approach, because you're so right, you know, and I think in just, you know, even away from Instagram, kind of navigating when to talk about it and how much to talk about it, because it is a difficult conversation, and it is one that is often heated from what I've found. The conversations that I've had around racism and around inclusion have actually ended quite heated, and it hasn't been comfortable, and it's been quite awkward, and there's been moments in that conversation which have been quite upsetting. So you're right, it's not about kind of having them all the time, because it is such a difficult subject to have, and it evokes these really strong feelings in people. But I think talking about it enough to kind of just give the subject justice and to give the movement justice, because really what we're trying to do is really make a change, and we have to do that together. And you know, if there are differing opinions on that movement, it's not going to be as strong, you know. So I think it's just, you know, I think it's just having the courage to just speak up, you know, and then I guess knowing when to kind of say, okay, you know, this is how I'm moving forward. It may be different to how you're moving forward, but let's move forward. And then, you know, I guess touch on more positive things, because it is a difficult subject.
It is, but it needs to be. There was a,
Oh.
I guess let's first start with kind of like, what is your experience of growing up as a mixed race? Like, what was that like?
Yeah.
And I remember like the story that you wrote of just like looking at your mom and you're over different. And so kind of.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, actually, because it is this whole movement actually brought up a lot of my memories towards what happened when I was growing up. And I didn't realize that those memories are things that I haven't actually fully healed yet. So for me, this has been positive, because it means that these kind of memories have actually kind of come up, and I've been able to talk about them and heal. And I've actually been quite enjoying talking about them now, because I feel like they're they were always valid, but so much more valid than ever, you know, and I feel very comforted by talking about it now. So thank you. So yeah, I grew up in a very small suburb outside London. So it was right in the middle of the countryside. So there was no one of any other ethnic origin around, apart from my sister, my dad, and I. And it was fine. I mean, you know, it was a really lovely childhood up until I was about 6. And then I remember the children in school starting to say things to me. And I just started to become aware that I was really different. I mean, I knew I was different because I knew the color of my skin was different to my mum's and to my dad's. And that's a difficult thing, being
Yeah.
a mixed race woman, because you're not the same as either of your parents, skin color wise. But you know, you're not made to feel different because you're still part of that family, of course. But yeah, when I was in school, I started to feel quite different. And I started to be embarrassed by that because the difference wasn't being celebrated. And I think, you know, I think if diversity is celebrated, it's brilliant, you know, but it wasn't celebrated. It was usually quite harsh comments. And those comments got more and more harsh as I got older and as children got older. And by the time I was about 12, it was really quite difficult. I remember kind of thinking, I can't walk into the classroom by myself. I don't want to. I was embarrassed by everything that I was, really. I felt like it was all not right because it was different. And yeah, just the comments were really, really hard hitting. And even now when I think about those comments, it still makes me quite upset because it wasn't, you know, I'd kind of go home and think, God, this is my family though as well. It's not just comments about me. It's like comments about what my family looks like, you know, and there's no getting away from the color of your skin. Like the amount of times when I was little that I'd wish that I could just be white and be like, oh, I just want to be the same as everybody else. My life would be so much easier. But you can't leave your skin color somewhere else. You know, I was really, I just didn't know what to do, how to handle it. And I didn't talk to anybody.
That makes, like, I can't even imagine that, you know,
Yeah,
because like as a woman, we're to be quiet, to be all these kind of things. Add on top of that a skin color, right?
absolutely.
And so I'm reading, what is it, white fragility right now.
Yeah,
And I didn't even know that like women were given the uh, right to vote, what, in 19 whatever, but like
yeah,
women of color were not given the right to vote until like 1965 or something like that. And I was like,
yeah.
I
I
didn't even
know
think of
the
that.
statistic crazy.
That we
Yeah,
already have being being a woman, being all this kind of stuff that, you know, is
yeah.
out there, but like adding on top that you can't change. And so do you actually think that like, because you are a body positive advocate and all that stuff, do you think the two went hand in hand because it was just not fitting into your body?
Yeah, definitely. Do you know, I grew up just feeling so different. And I guess I was always finding ways to be accepted. You know, it was like, how can I fit in? And I, you know, from a young age, I noticed that. I remember somebody saying to me, actually, you've put on weight. When I was young, I was probably about 7 or 8, and they said I put on weight, and they were saying I was eating a lot. And then I suddenly kind of thought, oh, have I? You know, I didn't notice it. I felt completely fine, but I thought maybe I should eat a bit less. And I was about 7 or 8, and I started eating a bit less, and then lost this tiny. I mean, it must have been a minuscule amount of weight, which wasn't even important. And then I remember it being quite celebrated that I'd lost this weight. And they were like, oh, look, your clothes look so much better. You know, you've lost. And I was thinking, have I? But for me, it really wasn't an issue whether I was a few pounds heavier or a few pounds lighter at that age. It just didn't matter. But somebody else had highlighted it. But I remember the kind of praise that I got from kind of losing this weight. And I was really young. And that kind of sunk in. And, you know, especially when I got to high school, I remember going on a diet and just getting so much more positive reactions and just feeling like, oh, wow, okay, so this is how you get to be kind of respected. And that was it. It was kind of it was a seed planted in my head. But then when I went to dance and drama school when I was 16, and that's when it got really bad because you were like the queen if you lost weight. You were like royalty, you know, put on the highest pedestal. And it was funny because I thought one summer I said to myself, I'm going to go home and I'm going to lose loads of weight because I want loads of respect. I want everybody to love me. That's just the notion I had in my head. And I ate like pickles and iceberg lettuce and maybe a few slices of bread for the whole summer. I mean, absolute terrible. My period stopped. You know, I really looked emaciated, and I went back to college and everybody was so excited for me that I'd lost this weight. But I was starving, and I remember thinking, I know this isn't right because I'm so hungry. You know, like I don't feel well. Yeah. But it was, so I think, that was one of the ways I learned to be accepted in my own skin, you know.
I could only imagine, right? Like, and I wrote a blog article about don't comment on my weight because we don't ever know. We glorify things. Oh, you look skinny. Asked, will this full video be on IG? Yes, it will be. But when you don't know what it took for someone to lose that weight or what they're doing. And these two conversations, they don't go hand in hand, side by side. Like you don't, when you make a comment on someone's skin, you don't know how they actually feel, like about the color of their skin or all that kind of, any of that kind of bullying system. And when you comment on someone's body, you have no idea what it took to get them there. And if you're glorifying disorder or a trigger or any of that kind of stuff. And so older and you realize, okay, I want to get away from disordered eating patterns or any of this kind of stuff. And how have you been like navigating through those conversations of like, I don't really like, this isn't appropriate. And talk about either one of the subjects, you know, like
it's so tough because you know you hear that kind of chat and it's like it's almost like a feeling in my chest that I get or in my stomach that, you know, I think, oh, I've got to say something now, you know, but you have to say it in the moment because the moment is quickly past, I think. But I think kind of identifying that feeling when somebody says something to you or about the situation, just identifying that feeling and thinking, that doesn't feel right inside me. You know, I think what's just been said doesn't feel right. And, you know, I'm getting much more confident now to actually say, oh, what did you mean by that? Just to actually kind of clarify what that person is trying to say. I think often people aren't trying to cause offense, you know, and they're often trying to just say something nice. And sometimes it can kind of be, I don't know, something that may trigger you. But that's why it's a really good thing to kind of just ask what they mean by it. And then sometimes I'll say something in the moment, but it depends how emotional I'm kind of feeling about what's been said, you know. I get very triggered by diet talk, you know, talk kind of like, I really, really, really personally dislike it when people talk about the amount of calories in food, because I just think it's just it really takes away from the experience of eating. And it is such a shame that we're focusing on this. And having that kind of calorie counting mentality, I think really is not healthy and is it's the smallest part of what that food is going to give you, you know, and you're really taking away from what that food can give you and how that food can nourish you. And you're also taking away from listening to your body. So I find that quite triggering. And sometimes I actually have to go to the toilet and actually calm myself down. I take a few breaths and I think, do I want to say something about this? And is this the right situation to say it in, you know, whether I'm around other people or not? And if it's not, sometimes I'll come away from the situation, think about it a bit more. And if it's still on my mind, then I'll often kind of call that person afterwards, or I'll ask to meet them and then just have a really nice conversation. Because I do think when emotions are involved, it can be more difficult to have those conversations. And it can sometimes come across in the wrong way when emotions are involved, because the last thing I think you want to do is attack somebody, because attacking somebody is really not going to bring you the required outcome, you know, a positive outcome that's good for both of you.
100%. And that's the hard part. You never know where someone else's emotions are going to lie and how they're going to take it.
Yes.
What I talked about is like how you approach a situation where you're like, I just want to have this conversation. And I love that you were like, what do you mean by that? Like, tell me a little bit. Tell me what you meant to say by that, because this is what I'm hearing right now.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't digest things in that way. We take everything for a world nowadays. Like, this is why, like,
yeah.
it's not personal. I'm just trying to educate myself. So how, like,
Yes.
forward, that's the way you any of these conversations, just like, how do I educate myself more? How do I wake myself more? And like, I didn't mean offense to you by this way, but at the same,
Yes.
what if a question you're asking is kind of offensive, where you're like, this is just the way my brain has kind of been, and now I'm trying to
Yeah.
learn more and like dive a little bit deeper into that subject.
Absolutely. Do you know, I think that I was reading something the other day that was saying that we cannot kind of fight for any movements unless we have the facts. Because it's really hard to actually kind of fight for something when you don't have any statistics or facts or, you know, kind of the knowledge behind what you're fighting for. And that's why it's been so important to gain this education, especially around anything actually that you feel passionate about. If you think you may have to, you want to fight for what you believe in, then you must educate yourself on what you believe in so that you're ready, really. And you know, I mean, I've been having a lot of chats about racism. I've had a lot of chats about body positivity since these two things have really become what I'm, you know, strongly passionate about. And I've had to become educated, you know, because actually there have been times in those conversations where people have said, well, how do you know that? You know, or because it can't just be your opinion, right? Because then it's just two people disagreeing with each other. It has to be more than that, I think, to kind of help broaden somebody else's opinion, you know, and help shape it. So I would say education is key on anything that you want to stand up for. Facts are really important in this kind of subject. And you're so right. I think that's a really good way to approach it, to say, you know, what do you mean by that? Because this is what I'm hearing. Am I right? And definitely always saying this isn't personal. I'm just trying to understand, you know, because this is what I believe and this is why. And I think being super honest, perhaps even saying, you know, I'm actually a little bit triggered by this. I feel a little bit triggered because of this, you know, and just trying to stay as calm as possible. But I think as well, being very aware that if you're going to dive into a conversation about racism, which I actually think we all should be, it's probably going to be a bit heated. And especially if there's somebody that is having a counter view on what you're talking about. I mean, and that's okay. It's okay to be heated. Actually, all of the conversations I've been having surrounding racism that have been heated have ended really well, you know, but they're not all going to, and that's just the fact of it.
No, not at all. But the way you approach it is that like we have to lean into this discomfort because we as humans, we like to stick with one, what we know, people that look like us, people that think that are like us. So you have to make an act to lean into the discomfort to actually create a change until it
Yeah.
becomes comfortable. And this is something that like I don't think will become comfortable, but you get
No.
situated with the discomfort where you're like, okay, I'm going to lean into this so I can learn a lot better. And I'm seeing that a
Yeah.
lot like in my family. Like my family is very much all over the board right now with politics, with theories, with all this kind of stuff. And it had to be in our family chat. I was like, guys, like boundaries. Like I'm at a point right now that this is too much and it's getting like you do realize it starts to get like personal and people start to make personal attacks. And you're just like, that's not valid anymore. And now I need to take a step back because now we're not giving facts. We're not educating. We're just trying to hurt because we don't have any more points. And that's where I see a lot going that gives people the resistant to have the conversation because they're like, oh, it's just going to turn into a heated debate. But it doesn't.
Yeah.
It can be a heated debate. It doesn't need to be an argument. Like that's
Exactly. And I think, you know, the minute you feel like it's becoming an argument, you can really bring it back by just saying that I really believe that this is just two different opinions. And I want to understand because you know, you value the person you're talking to. And, you know, I value our friendship and I really I want to understand where you're coming from. You know what this whole movement has made me think, and this is really quite strong. I have actually been thinking recently, if I do have people close to me that don't kind of aren't pro, you know, anti-racist, then I'm not interested in our friendship anymore. And you know, I it sounds harsh, but that, you know, when you find the things that you're so passionate about, and body positivity. I also can't be around people that I feel like are talking about calories all the time and, you know, being negative about other people's bodies or anything like that. I don't want to stand beside that. And, you know, I think we're lucky as adults to kind of have the choice. When you find things you're super passionate about, you know, if somebody doesn't have those kind of same understandings or like passions too, it's almost like a no-go area for me now. So, you know, I think if you can't see eye to eye, it actually sometimes it's kind of important to think, well, is that friendship the right thing for me if you feel strongly enough about what you're debating?
Exactly. Or if you can't like sit with the discomfort of where I'm at. Like if you're trying to out,
Yeah.
turn a blind eye, it's like how much longer can you turn a blind eye? Like
Absolutely. Yeah. And do you know what? I'm so impressed, Laura, by like you, because I feel like you've been making so much noise about the Black Lives Matter subject. And I think it's so brilliant because I have noticed, you know, obviously I know there are people who are feeling like they, you know, it's not their argument to have because they feel like, well, they weren't directly involved and, you know, they didn't do anything and it's, you know, for other people to sort out. But as I've been reading, that's almost taking the side of the oppressor.
exactly. And that's
Yeah.
what I did. I was like, it's not my battle, it's not that stuff. And I was like, no, but it is my battle because we're not involved. And the people that need to be speaking on it are white privileged people that have been shutting it out. Like they're the ones
Yes.
that about it because
Yeah.
the color in Africa, like all the kind of stuff, they've been talking about it. Like
Yeah.
that's so I was the in white fragility. That's like what they talk about is like so when women were suppressed, they were suppressed by the man, right? So
Yeah.
how you can tell I'm getting like heated. But what they had to do was get the men involved on their side so that they could stop being suppressed.
Oh,
That's a
that's brilliant.
freaking thing here. Like we cannot be like, oh, it's their fight. That's not
Yes,
how
that
any.
is so, yes, yes, you are so right. That's so true that we need actually people that have privilege. Like in any movement, the people of privilege, sadly, are the ones that are more listened to, you know, and so their voices are more heard. And so, you know, I just think you can't get away from it if the people of privilege are also speaking about it. So I just think, yeah, you're so right there. I think, you know, it's just so important that we have everybody on board.
Exactly. And it needs to stop being this thing of like, I'm not gonna get it right. And it's like, who the fuck cares? Like, say something.
No,
Like
yes, yes, you're so right with that. Do you know what? That is a brilliant point because I think that is what a lot of people might be scared about. You know, just thinking, oh gosh, I don't want to cause offence and I could make it worse, and it, you know, may be heated. But actually, you're so right. It doesn't matter. I was recently talking to a close friend actually about some stories that I had about racism and the fact that this is brought up a lot. You know, just personally for me. And she said, she looked at me and she said, "Gosh, I don't know what to say." She said, "I don't know what to say to you. I want to say the right thing, but I don't know what to say." And I said to her, there isn't the right thing to say. You don't have to say anything, you know, like to me, or just, you know, whatever comes to your head will be the right thing to say. You know, I think just not having the discussion is the worst bit.
exactly. And you walk into it being a perpetual student, you go, oh, like I don't know what to say. They'll let you know if it's offensive. Like either they'll say it politely,
Yeah,
either way, you'll learn that what you just said is not right. And what
absolutely.
more instead
Yeah.
stop identifying with, and this is every single thing in life that I feel is like if we stop identifying with the need to be right and we start identifying with the need to just do something and be educated, that's where we learn more. And so if we
That's brilliant.
like perpetual student, like that's it. And
Yes,
I'm wrong, I'm like hell yes, teach me something new then. Like, but
that's brilliant. Yeah.
if you're sitting there and you're like I'm afraid to like not be right, I'm afraid to not try, it's like, well, that's what got us into this fucking problem.
Yeah.
Like need to sit with discomfort if you want to evolve as a human being in any spectrum of your life. Think of it with friends, with boyfriends, with partners, with any of that kind of stuff. If they said something that offended you or that you didn't sit right with you, wouldn't you be like, what did you mean by that? Or would
Yeah.
you let through, which is usually what we do in this modern world, is we're like, oh, this is offensive, like, but I'm gonna let it spew. And then someone leaves the toilet seat up and we chew their fucking face off. But
Yes, yes.
oh, and so it really is, where can you learn to have that communication with yourself and sit there and be like, this is what I heard from that, and this is that, what did you mean by that? How I'm taking it.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yes. At the end of the day, that is your truth, right? You know, the thing that comes to your heart and your mind is your truth, right? And it's just having the courage to speak out what comes up. And just, I feel like if it's always done with love and respect, you're doing the best you can. You know, like as long as it is done with respect. But that truth has come up to your heart and it's come into your head for a reason. And it's, you know, I believe that your voice was given to you to speak what's in your heart, you know, and kind of what comes up. And I just feel like, choose yourself, do yourself justice, you know, like really put you first. If somebody has said something that is offensive or that goes against a movement that you're really passionate about, say something, you know, really, you're so right, just say anything. But kind of internalizing that and kind of pushing it down is like just suppressing. And I just feel like now is not the time to suppress. Now is the time to speak up. And you know, this movement is, you know, I guess, you know, the Instagram trend of this movement is starting to die down a bit, but we are the ones that also, we need to keep it alive in our friendship groups, because that's, you know, we're continuing to make the change there, you know, and continuing to have these discussions, because people, you know, have different opinions to what was going on, and you know, people are being woken up. But you know, especially for some people haven't been on social media, you know, they don't know, and so they're a bit like, what's going on? So I just think it's important to just keep having these conversations. And you're so right, I know it's so uncomfortable, it is uncomfortable, but it's worth it.
but it's exactly kind of like what we were talking about, right? Like when you pull up just fuck surface level conversations. Like, I want to know, what is your deep trauma? Tell me about your shadow self. Like all this
Yeah.
self is human. Like,
Yes, yes.
wish that was the norm. And I
Yeah,
understand, like, we're a different breed. That's not normal table conversation, but for us, that is. And
yeah,
and people should be doing that, because
yeah.
you learn more about the people you're at a table with by not pushing their buttons, but asking, tell me what you think about this, and not in a way of asking that question so that you can then project your biases on it. It's okay, I want to educate myself on how you're seeing this situation. I can learn better. And maybe I need to go learn something new, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe I need to go learn something as well. And when we step
Yeah.
into that and really invite someone else, that gives them the comfort as well. Because if we come into something trying to manipulate a conversation, trying to start an argument, trying to pick points, all that kind of stuff, which you see a lot of, like you said, if it's an invitation of love and you're just having a conversation of like, I'm not meaning anything by it. But a lot of the times you'll see people where they do by it. Like, people are very fucking opinionated. They're trying to get into something and you're like, that's not the kind of conversation I'm having right now. Like, I'm just trying
Absolutely.
to want to learn more. And you learn more about the person you're sitting at the table with, right? Like, if you're
Yes, exactly.
friendships, your partner, your spouse, whatever it is, like, don't you want to know kind of what their stance is so that you can
Yeah,
know them as well and release this like build up that you keep inside of you?
absolutely. And I think if their opinion triggers you, then you have to look inside, because you know, somebody else's opinion triggers you for a reason, you know, and I think that that's to do with you. And you know, the only way that you can you know, kind of release these triggers is to feel them, to feel where that's coming from. Do you know, I wonder if it might be helpful for people watching, as we're talking about conversations, maybe we should talk about that difficult conversation that we had in the restaurant a couple of weekends ago, just how it went, you know, and how we navigated our way through it. Because Laura and I went for dinner with a couple of friends a few weekends ago, and we got onto the Black Lives Matter subject, and it was definitely heated, wasn't it? And it went on for quite a while.
Yeah.
And basically, you know, one of our friends just made a comment about how it was difficult being a woman And that she said bad things happen, right? And I said to her, yes, but that's not the same. And that's where the argument, not the argument, that's where the debate started, And so then she said, well, no, it is, because I know hardships, because I've been a woman in this situation. And then, and then it really just continued from there. But it was that feeling when she was talking about being a woman and about those hardships. There was a feeling in my chest that thought, hang on, this isn't right, because, being a Black person or a person of color, it's completely different to different genders. Yes, you can talk about being a woman, and that is, less privileged than being a man, but then take it a step further, being a woman of color, it's completely different. There are completely different struggles there.
Like the conversation where we're seeing now, where everyone's fighting against, but like all lives matter, and we're like, that's not what we're saying. They're two different like two different
exactly.
Yes, yes, we are still fighting that battle, right? Like that.
Yes, exactly. And we will for a long time.
Exactly. Like we're not discrediting that battle.
Yes.
Other traumas that are happening in the world right now. It's like, but if one thing is not there, how can we articulate better that this needs to be the basis so that we can grow from there? And so navigating that conversation, it did, mind you, there was wine involved, so that probably didn't help. Kind of sit there and like open up this platform of like, okay, we have a difference of opinion. How do we sit in this?
Yes. And
well, for longer than we wanted to, because I'm guilty of coming back from the bathroom being like, okay, let's move on, and you're like, I'm not done yet, and I was like, good, uncomfortable, but like, yeah, I get it, like continue leaning in, because this is where it needs to be,
and that's what happened, because there is of course a feeling when something's uncomfortable to just change the subject and move away from it, because you're like, it's Saturday night, we're having a nice dinner, we didn't want it to be like this, we all came to have a nice time together, and suddenly it almost feels like we're arguing. But actually, it was so positive what came out of that situation. I mean, we must have been talking in a heated way for about an hour, and and we stuck with it. All of us stuck with it, even though some of us wanted to change the subject. We really stuck with it, and in the end, the friend that we had slightly different opinions with actually messaged me a few days later saying to me, Julia, can you give me some reading on how I can educate myself on this, because actually, and she said, thank you for being so fierce with it, because actually she did have a different opinion, and she didn't realize that opinion kind of wasn't supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, because in her head she was, right, but so it was brilliant. So, actually that conversation came with having a stronger friendship, and a friendship that I'm actually much more comfortable in now. And also somebody that has said, right, she's actually doing the reading. And she said to me, can we have another discussion about it after I finish the book? So that's really the biggest, I think that's the best thing that can come of these conversations. If you're really a great friend and somebody that you really love, and, like family and stuff like that, I feel like, you just saying things may plant a seed, and that's brilliant. Even if you feel like you haven't, often you've planted a seed.
Oh yeah. And it's always through like leading by example, right? Like you're just like, I'm not trying to, but I'm gonna do this. But at the same time, you can hear the difference. Like I've been from that dinner and other conversations that say I've been having like with my family, you can tell the difference of like someone that genuinely thinks they're in the right place, and then someone that's trying to defend the wrong place. Like there are two difference of opinions there.
Yes, exactly. And I just think it's brilliant, actually, because I think, Laura and I were also talking at another dinner. We have quite a lot of dinners. Yeah, and we were talking at another dinner, and I was saying to Laura that sometimes I find it difficult to say to people, oh, I didn't like it when you did this, And Laura said to me, tell me what you don't like or haven't liked, something like that. And I did it, and I felt like this kind of weight lifted off my shoulders, and I felt so much closer to you, you know, afterwards. And that's why it's actually you're actually doing your relationships a favor if you have these hard conversations. Your relationships will 100% be better after you show them your truth. Because how can you actually be in a friendship if you're not really showing who you actually are?
And then you have to have a wall up and all this kind of
Yeah.
avoid that because we don't want to make the other person comfortable.
Yeah.
And service to them because you're not giving them an opportunity to show you who they are at this time.
Yeah.
Like my dad had this huge conflict for like years. We weren't able to like have a real conversation. And finally it was
Really?
saw that we were projecting our old lies onto each other. Anytime we would sit down and have a conversation, it was like biting each other's heads off. And finally, like we sat down, I remember we were in Krabby and we had this like deep, I was like, okay, like when I'm around you, I become like the old me and I like that. So let's
Yeah.
have a really difficult conversation, things that have happened in our past and just put it out there and see what's going to happen. And it's things
Yeah.
I carried with me for 25 years.
I know. I know.
Builds up because you're avoiding, oh, it's going to blow up into this because I'm guessing this is how they're going. I'm assuming this is how they're going to respond, and it's gonna be a fight. It's gonna be all this kind of stuff. But really, you're just like, oh, it was a normal conversation that I carried with me for 25 years. We could have just had a conversation. Like,
Oh, do you know, I'm so glad you said that because it is so hard. Actually, I know that I have got conversations that I need to have with some people in my life, and I'm really shying away from it, even though I'm here being like, have the conversations. You know, they're really hard, especially with kind of family members and people that you know are going to be in your life for the rest of your life, you know. But it does make them stronger. And actually, anytime I've had a conversation, like for example with you, when I said to you, oh, I didn't like it when this happened, you were like, thank you for saying that. Yeah. You know, you were so open. You were like, why did you take so long to say that? Do you know what I mean? I mean, because it was, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And it's made things like so much stronger. Yeah. It's just an important part of the relationship. And I wonder why we've kind of taken ourselves back from that, you know.
I've done a lot of thinking on that because at least for me, like growing up, if I spoke an opinion that my parents didn't agree with, I got yelled at. So that's like like, or like the girls in school growing up, if you didn't agree with the clique, you were out of the clique super quick.
Yeah, true.
The things in us where it's like, oh, I can't say anything, or like you work in a corporate setting, you can't go against your boss. So we are told to not use our voice, to sit there, yes. Just okay, like I have my opinions, but I'll just go write about it in my journal and let it eat me up inside and pay my therapist too much money until it comes out. Like,
yes.
And things we could have just sat down. Like seriously, the conversation. And mind you, I've tried where I was like, I'm gonna have this conversation, but like I didn't let the other party know that we were having this conversation. So
yeah.
Like how do you? You're like, I've been holding this in, and this is how it is. So it's like sets the situation, right? As opposed to just like came at me at dinner and was just like, this is the. I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, and do you know what? That's actually a really good point. If you are planning to have a difficult conversation, which isn't always going to happen, especially when there's, you know, things that you get triggered by or movements that you strongly believe in somebody, because you can't kind of calculate whether somebody's going to say that. But with regards to your relationships, if you know something needs to be said, then it is a really great idea to actually kind of message that person and kind of say, could I, you know, have your time? I really feel like I'd love to discuss something with you that's kind of been on my mind. You know, I think that's a really kind of respectful thing to do, because at least the person's briefed a little bit.
And going into it, like something I've grown into now is that it doesn't have to be an attack or defense, but like always like, you hurt me, so these are all the things that I want to
yes.
And it like spirals when it's really like, this is how you're living and this is how I'm because of that. Can we talk about that? Exactly how we started. It's like, you're living in a certain way, you're doing, this is how I grew up, this is how, whatever it is, how I'm feeling. How can we kind of talk about this? So I'm seeing it this way. What do you actually mean? Because we wear glasses that paint the world in the way that we see it, right? You see that with people around you, like people that are like thinking all this kind of stuff. Like world's out to get them. They're negative. They're all this kind. They paint themselves that way. Or you have the other spectrum where like it's unicorns and rainbows, and they never see a bad thing happen in the world, even like in front of them. They're like, oopsies, like all that. And so we surround ourselves in that kind of light. So if you walk into a situation, you're like, you're seeing something I'm not seeing. Can you bring that back to me at my level? Use different kind of language and be like, and being able to articulate back what someone says, like, this is the way I'm hearing it. Is that what you mean? Like,
yes, yeah, exactly. That's the best way to kind of just make sure, because sometimes we can take things wrong as well. You know, sometimes we hear things not in the way that they were meant often, right? Because we can't tell what somebody else is thinking. We'd never be able to do that. But it is just important to just clarify. Yes, exactly.
like
Exactly.
age where like everything is manipulated, and now that everyone doesn't want to have conversations like this, they want to like message and text message, and you can
Yeah.
say, and then you're reading something in a way, and you're like, that asshole, like about the flowers, and like you thought they were
Yes.
fantastic, and you never really truly know, and it really is like I think the circle of this conversation, like setting the foundation of the conversations that need to be had without attacking the person you're having that with. Like open up the conversation of like, hey, this will be better for all of us on a global level moving forward. It doesn't have to be a deep converse. It doesn't have to be like talking
Yeah.
thing deep under the sun, but it does have to be like, this is what you meant. Because then we can go back to eating whatever we were doing and like whatever. But like, what did you mean by that? So we can move forward, right? And
Yeah.
that's what all these movements are provoking. It doesn't have to just be Black Lives Matter and all this kind of stuff going on right now. It's just genuinely starting conversations around the hard things in life right now, which
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's such a great point that you just made, that let's think about, you know, some of these movements, the global impact that just us saying something will have, because it always has a ripple effect, you know. So, you know, if we're standing up for anything, we're actually really strongly supporting what we do, but just making sure that it is done with love and respect, and really don't be afraid to take yourself away from the table to calm down, or just to have a few breaths or whatever, and then come back to the situation, for sure.
and putting yourself first. Like we put so
Yeah,
much not wanting to hurt other people and not wanting to do this, but then it eats you up for years.
I
Like for,
know.
and it comes out and like, and this comes back to like binge eating, binge drinking, doing drugs, all this kind of stuff, because we let all this stuff inside of us because we're afraid to hurt someone else. When really it's like,
Yeah.
but you can let it out. Like you don't need to just like hold it in and really digest it in your body and let it manifest in weird ways. You could just be like, hi, this is, I'm not doing so well. This is what I'm feeling, da 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 da. And really opening and inviting into their lives, right? Because they
Well, absolutely. Yeah. And also being open for yourself, because when somebody says something to you, if you are creating these relationships where you're kind of having really open communication, then you also need to be really open towards people saying things to you, you know, about, you know, behaviors, or I don't know, anything that they may have disagreed with, or something they wanted to clarify. It's really important to just be open yourself, to be like, okay, yes, I take that. And you know, knowing that if it's a friend or a family member, it's usually not meant to hurt. So trying not to take it too personally, but just using it as an opportunity to learn and grow, and like connect more deeply with that other human being.
And so, what would you say is kind of your perspective of how we move into this whole new normal? Like, what are you doing on a personal level, on a business level, kind of stuff? Like, how are you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's been brilliant, because for personally, I feel like I found something else that I'm super passionate about, that I didn't even, yeah, I knew I was, but I'm just so happy that it's there's so much noise, because it's been helping my healing process personally, but also something that I've been like, yes, almost like rearing to make noise about myself. So that's great. So yeah, the new normal, I'm just myself, just keep carrying on educating myself on anything that I can. I'm finding the learning that I'm acquiring so interesting, from different podcasts, different books. I think the one I'm reading at the moment, the name is Me and White Supremacy, and it's brilliant. Yeah, just kind of getting all of the facts that I can get, and having the conversations, which I've been finding so interesting, hearing about different people's points of view. And so that's kind of how it's enhanced me as a person. It's actually made me be more confident with speaking my truth in other areas as well. But also with regards to business, what was really interesting is I was trying to take a really good, not trying, I took a really good look at, am I being as diverse as possible in my business, you know? And actually what I realized was that I've been kind of speaking to my staff, and also kind of acting towards my staff as I would act towards staff in England, right? And actually I was like, hang on a second, I have a business in Thailand. All of my employees are Thai. I cannot expect for them to fully understand the ways that I would do things in England, because we're not in England, right? You know, we're in Thailand. And I haven't even researched, you know, how people run businesses in Thailand, like what's the best way, and how, you know, Thai people, how do they kind of like to be spoken to? What is in their culture that is comfortable for them? You know, how do they do business, and how do they work well together? And I hadn't even researched that and hadn't even thought about that. And so that's one of the biggest things that I've now been looking into and being like, okay, that's not very diverse of you, Julia, to just be like, it should be done by English standards. You know, we're not in England. You've chosen to start a business in Thailand. You need to educate yourself on how to run a business in Thailand with Thai employees. So that's been the biggest thing that I'm learning at the moment, and also talking to them and saying, have I been doing things, you know, that you know, kind of speak to you, and you know, how would you prefer that I kind of run, you know, this business with you guys, you know? And they've even been giving me pointers as well. So yeah, so that's been brilliant. Just being more open to diversity, and that not being something that you fully yet understand, but like education is out there, which is so lucky.
Yeah. I'll have to pick your brain on that, because that's something that came
Yeah.
up well. It's just like, not that I was intentionally not looking, but like even like on my newsfeed and like the business mentors that I look at, like it was very white women. Like that was something that I
Yeah.
didn't think of to educate myself on, or
Yeah.
not even like Thailand, like nothing. It was just like I'm very like Marie Forleo, Amy Porterfield, like all these kind of things, and I'm like,
Yes.
oh shit, like I didn't even think of that realm of how am I communicating? How can I learn better? How can I bring this into not just my life but my company, right?
Absolutely. I know, and I saw this statistic on Instagram that Black people and people of color have 40% less following than white people in general. And isn't that insane? And I think people haven't been doing it intentionally. As you said, you know, you don't not follow somebody because of the color of their skin, but it's very interesting that, you know, that's actually kind of been the case. And so I think this movement's been brilliant. I started following this Black fashion designer, and she said she grew by like 7,000 likes and 7,000 followers in a week, and she was like, okay, this is how it should have been. And she said she was always wondering why people who were doing such a similar thing to her weren't getting the same, she wasn't getting the same followers. So I think that's brilliant that like people have actually noticed that, especially just on their feeds, and even just making your Instagram feed much more diverse.
It's sitting with the discomfort, right? Like
Yeah.
I realize like I surround myself with people that look, act, think, all that kind of stuff. So how can I spice that up so I can be a better fucking human? Like
Yes.
you are so blindsided and you're not challenging yourself. Like I challenge myself in the gym. I'm learning something new every day. Like I'm doing all these kind of things, but not like on an ethnic cultural level. That's not something like I live in Thailand. I don't speak Thai. I don't do any of that stuff. Like it's all that kind
Yeah, exactly.
of, like
Yeah.
dude, get out of your own lane. Literally, like
That's such a good point as well. I don't speak Thai. I mean, I try, but oh my gosh, I mean, it's not good. And that's embarrassing because I have been here for 6 years now, and that's not okay. Even yesterday, Nora and I went to get massages, and the massage lady was like, "How long have you been here?" And I said, 6 years. And she was like, "So you speak Thai?" And I was like, "No, that's not okay. Like, that's like shame on me, you know, really." But we have been surrounding ourselves with loads of other people that speak English. That's why we haven't. If we had to have learnt Thai, we would have done, right? But we've surrounded ourselves with people to make sure that we don't have to. And so, yeah, that's definitely something we should learn. You're doing Thai lessons though, right?
It was my big quarantine moment when I realized this whole thing, and I wanted to get involved in Thailand because everyone was like, the suicide rates were higher than the corona stuff, and I was like, I can't even help because I can't even speak, and I felt so
True. Very good point. Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go, Thai. Let's go. I know.
So hard. All right. Well, we are approaching the
I know.
Good thing you're just upstairs so we can continue the conversation. Of joy. But I want to fire off the last 3 questions that I ask, and then and tell everyone how beautiful everything you do is, even with the smashed banana loaf in the fridge. So, if you could give your younger self 3 words of advice, what would you give?
Oh, such a nice question. I guess just, you know, you have so many attributes and capabilities that you know nothing about yet. Just trust that the moment will come for those to shine. I love you, I guess. Just like I love you, and you are enough. Like you're an amazing human. I would have said that to myself every day from, you know, the moment I could talk, if I could have done.
You know, a fun fact. This isn't that fun, but you know how in one of your boxes you wrote like "you are enough." That's hung up in my office.
I love that. You know, I love hearing that. If I walk into somebody's home and I see one of the notes on as anywhere, I'm like, yes, that's almost more important to me than you enjoying our products. Just putting that out there.
And I was just like, yeah. And I just, anyways.
Yes. Yeah.
What does happy mean to you?
I really like belly laughing, and it's something that I've recently realized that I don't do it enough, you know. And when you're so free and you feel like kind of, I don't know, just like not bogged down by things, to be able to just laugh until your stomach hurts and actually kind of look back on that moment and be laughing. So yeah, belly laughing with people that you love after a really good night's sleep and a good yoga session is happiness to me. Yeah.
Actually, me after my last interview that I did was about the inner child. And so a guy came up and messaged me after, and he's like, you had all this stuff about the inner child, but the inner child is like playfulness and like deep laugh and all that. And I was like, that's so interesting. Like, because that's into that playful inner child more, because we do kind of use it as a, well, that's your inner child, that's your inner mean bitch, like all this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, that's such a good point. Like, we need to like play.
We do need to play more, and just like children learn through play, adults also learn through play, you know, but we don't do it enough at all. And also play without our phones, like play without the screens, play to the point where you are not recording that play. Do you know what I mean? Like we play and then we're like, oh, better video it for Instagram. Everybody needs to know I'm having fun. And actually it's like about putting everything away and then just going wild. Like, be wild. Wild doesn't involve phones.
Exactly. And then I didn't know a timer popped up on this. But hello. What is one word to describe your current state of being?
Courageous.
Love it.
Yes.
How do you find you and all that you do?
Okay, so guys, if you are in Thailand, you can order our plant-based delicious desserts any day of the week, Monday to Friday. on our website, which is www.thebananawarrior.com, and also we are on Instagram as the.banana.warrior. So yeah, there.
Thank you so much. As always,
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're continuing this conversation in the private Facebook group, Happy Gut Gang. If you guys want to come hang out there, you can catch the replay and all that stuff. But yeah, Eat Her Bread it has everything. Like, it's just good soul food. Like, all that goody stuff, you know?
Yeah, honestly, do you know, I just studied Reiki as well, so I'm going to start infusing desserts with these hands, these healing hands here.
You're my favorite.
Thank you so much, Bez. You're doing amazing things. Bye.